Hey guys, in this video we're going to be creating a Slack app which will later turn into an AI powered bot. For now we're just going to give it the permissions that it needs to be able to read and write the Slack messages on our account. We'll go ahead and see it actually installed on our Slack application, and then later in the video I'll show you how we're going to update our code. It's going to need some information from the bot that we'll create. And I'm also going to show you how to get the code updated so we can plug it into our cloud server, which will keep our bot always running and live and accessible to anyone, even when our personal computers are not working. Let's go ahead and jump in. All right, once you've created your Slack account, you can just go to api.slack.com. From here, we'll click on your apps, and then we'll create our first app. We're going to go ahead and do it from scratch. I'm going to call the app Auto, and then I have a couple of workspaces, but I've created this one recently called Automate Playground that I'm going to go ahead and use, and then just create app. And then looking at the left hand side, we can see there are settings and features. We're really just going to focus right now on OAuth and permissions, and then we'll follow up by installing it, but let's jump down here first. And this is basically just giving Auto the permission and authorization to access certain information that happens within Slack. And so the two that we're going to add is one being channels history, which gives him the ability to view messages in public channels for channels that Auto's been added to. The second one is chat write, so we'll select that as well, and this will give Auto the ability to actually send messages. And so we're really just giving him permission to access that information, and in a later video I'll show you how we set him up to actually be able to retrieve that information and respond to it. But let's just get him installed on our app now. So we can go to the Install App tab and then Install to Workspace. We'll allow him to do both of those. These are just saying, are you sure you want to give him those permissions that we set? And then you'll see we also get a authorization token here that we'll use in a later part of this video. But for now, let's flip to our Slack app. And then look at that, Auto has appeared here. All right, next we're going to start updating our code so we can host it on a cloud server and also connect it to Slack. Let me show you. All right, so we're going to start off by copying our bot user token, and we'll paste it into our environment file. So we'll go ahead and write in Slack bot token equals with parentheses on this one. And then we're going to do our Slack signing secret equals, and then I'll show you where we can grab that. If we go back to here, we can go to basic information. We'll scroll down, and then we can see within this app credentials, there's the signing secret here. So we just show that, copy and paste. And then this one has quotes as well. All right, next I'll show you guys how to create the connection to Slack. It's essentially some lines of code starting with installing some Slack packages. We'll create a connection and verification with Slack. And then we'll leave an area where we have a handler which will handle the events. In this case, we're going to be handling a message from Slack. Ultimately, we want our AI bot to recognize that a message came in and then decide how to respond to that. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new file. We'll go ahead and call this main.py. This will be our main handler page for our entire application. And what we can do is actually link to other pages, which I'll show you. We'll be pulling in the Auto page and a function from there. For now, let's focus on this main page. I'm just going to copy and paste the code in. And then I'll scroll to the top and just quickly highlight some things here. So first thing, I've created titles now for each of the sections where I'm doing something. This is good to keep yourself organized, and also if you're working with other people, it's a good way to communicate within your code base. So anytime there's a hashtag or a pound sign before writing or any code, it makes it so that it does not run. It's only readable. That essentially covers everything from installing the packages to loading our environment variables. We're initializing our Flask and Slack apps, which is creating that connection. Here we decide how to handle the message from Slack. And then here's our verification and then ultimately this is what tells it to run. Alright, some of you might have seen that the packages were erroring out. That's again because they weren't installed. So next we'll just go ahead and install some of those packages, and then we're actually going to retrieve the bot ID that will load as an environment variable as well. That one's not available on the Slack interface, so we're going to use the code to just get the bot user ID, which is the last thing we'll need to initiate and connect to Slack. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so we'll just start off installing those packages I mentioned. The first one going to be Flask. Now we are ready to just run the last bit of code here. So if you scroll all the way down, we'll actually need to load these here. So let's just go ahead and highlight these, and then we can run our Shift tab. Do we want to open a new interactive file? No, let's just go ahead and do it right in here. We'll load the environment variables. We're gonna need to load these as well. And I believe we might need to initiate this. So let's just do that. And then we'll scroll all the way down and run this code. So once we highlight it all, basically this function is now defined. So if we highlight over the function, we can actually just run this part of the code. And then we should be able to get the user ID. So we can copy and paste this. We'll scroll back to environment variables. It's opening it over here, but that's not what we want. So we can just click this one here, and then we'll go to Slack bot ID equals, and then this one needs quotes as well. Oops. I think it already had them, huh? So we can just do that. And then we are all set. Actually, one thing we'll want to do is change this to Slack bot user ID is the term that I use. We'll put one more underscore there, and then we are good to go. I quickly want to touch on why we created a second file for the connection to Slack. Overall, when working in projects, especially when scaling and or working with other people, it's good to keep your code organized. And when you focus one page on a specific task, you can also catch errors and understand if each one of your parts of code is working correctly. You can see we still had our auto file within there, which we're going to go ahead and work on next. And let's jump in. All right, so let's go to the auto page, and then we'll just go ahead and start updating this. I'm actually going to go ahead and add some titles in here to start off, just to keep our code a little bit cleaner and easier to read, as I mentioned. So the first one we'll do is install packages, just to title this. The next one we will call load environment variables. The next one we will call initiate OpenAI. So this just establishes that connection. From there, we'll go ahead and title this part create autobot function. All right, and then ultimately what that says is we're creating a function. So let's go ahead and do that. So we just start off by calling in def and then auto say comma text. From there, we will tab out this completion. By that I just mean indent it, so that that's falling within our function, because we're just going to go ahead and use a majority of the code from what OpenAI gave us. I do like using GPT-4, so we'll go ahead and do that to start. And then we're going to change the system prompt and also the user prompt here. So the first one we're going to do is change this to you are a friendly AI assistant named Otto. You like to talk about AI automation. So we're just telling him what to do. I did not mean to click that. The next thing we'll do is, instead of having quotes here, which is really inputting true text that we're writing out, we're actually going to use a variable called text. And that's ultimately what we did here. So in this function, we're allowing it to pass through text, which we'll be able to pull from the main page. And then you can see it'll take that here. The text we're going to use is the input that somebody's typing in from Slack. And so that will be the text that we're pulling in here. The other part of this function is this say, which is an easy way that Slack, using their package installations, they made it super easy for us to be able to respond using this say. So what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of having this be a print, we're going to indent, and then we'll say response equals completion.choices and then .message, and then one thing we want to do is .content. If you saw before, we had in here where it's still including chat completions, content. So all we want is the content within there. So we can add this .content there, and then we'll be able to say, text equals response. So don't be confused, this text is not the same with that one. This is just Slack's way of saying any say message has to have text that it's going to use to respond with, and then we want that text to be our response, which is here. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is get our file ready for when we have it running on a cloud server. What we need to do is add in a new file, a requirements.txt file, which will essentially give our server the ability to have its own environment set up. So you saw when we were running some of that code initially, we installed OpenAI and python.env, and that allowed us to run the code on our own computers. So whenever we create a cloud server, we need to essentially give it the information to install those packages itself, and we do that by creating this requirements.txt file. Alright, so we'll start off by creating a new file here. We'll call it the requirements.txt, and then I'm just going to paste these in. Feel free to just type them in for yourself. And that's it. Our code is now ready to be loaded to a cloud server. We'll connect that to Slack, and then we'll have our AI assistant up and running. I'll see you in the next video.